I wonder if Raziel had a family. I mean, maybe not a wife and kids, but surely he had a mom and dad. Cause, clearly he got into the nobility of the military somehow, and a lot of times that's related to family. At least in the era this game is set in. I know there's some other feasible explanations for Raziel to be on top, but what I'm getting at is, what if you became a vampire, and your parents were still alive, or you were married, or you had kids or something? Do you, write a letter home? Do you go to the family reunions, or the Thanksgiving dinners, or anything? Does everyone have to try to be open-minded? Is that awkward? When Kain revived Raziel as a vampire, Raziel didn't remember his former life. But if you were revived in an area around where your family lived, people would recognize you. They'd be like, "Oh, Steve McGiverman. Oh, dude, you're still alive. I thought you died." And you'd be like, "Oh, no, you must have me confused with someone else. I'm Saber Deathfang, the vampire." But just like Raziel was able to look at his past life and say he wished he had that again, maybe you'd meet your wife and you'd be like, "Wow, you're really pretty. I kinda wanna go back to this." That must have happened at least once. And then what? Do you come out to your parents? Would they be really disappointed? Is it like coming out of the closet or something? Do you have to get them warmed up to vampire culture and understand what it's really all about, And oh man, what if your kids got bullied at school cause dad was a vampire? Would you try to hide it? Would you put on a shirt and try to never smile so people can't see your teeth? Just think. If Mobius hadn't launched a genocidal campaign, and if Kain weren't the murderous poster boy for all vampires, the story of Nosgoth could have been about progression and identity politics. It would have been about a bunch of young, attractive, shirtless men just trying to get the world to accept them for who they are. Oh well. I guess I'll just have to settle for all those smutty fanfics that are probably out there. Anyway, let's get back to our game. It turns out the gateway from the graveyard didn't lead directly to the pillars, but rather into a creek which I traipsed through for 3 hours. But at last, here I finally was at my destination.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor.
And I am Ray. And I think if vampires were an allegory for being gay, it would create a lot of bizarre cultural problems, yes.
That's Peyton.
How do you figure? Well, if Nosgoth over time came to accept vampires, then other cultures wouldn't understand, yes. When society became more global, it would lead to all kinds of conflicts. Oh, you think that everybody would be really worried about vampires sucking their blood? No, yes. They'd be more worried about vampires ending their family lines because they can't have children, yes. Girl falls in love with vampire cannot have babies. Mom is always asking, when will you have babies? Oh, you can't, you married the vampire. Way to go, Darla, yes.
This is coming back to that theory that vampire society would fall apart because all the rules are wrong for immortality, right?
Yes, basically, but he's also one of those things. Try being from a place where family is still super important and be gay. It is very challenging.
Why don't you just come out to your parents, Peyton?
I will never do that! Oh, do they not know? No, they don't! You tell them if it is so important! No, that's okay. That's like your thing, Peyton. I don't really want to be involved. Well, that is fine. I only have one interest in how you're involved, and you never go for it.
Hey.
What?
If Raziel were to be a different color, what shade do you guys think would be good?
I think blue is actually a really good color for him, but I guess, I would change it to red, yes. The same color as my hatred for your tactless change of subject, Taylor.
Okay, but seriously though, we should change subject.
Who cares, yes. You know, though, the whole vampire thing is a pretty good allegory for homosexuality, and I don't think it's that profound to say that, because I think a lot of books, and maybe even some video games and movies have come to the same conclusion.
I disagree. There's one, maybe two things in common. And it really depends on your cultural context, because the first maybe is that you're trying to hide who you really are. Not in this setting, obviously, but in some settings you do.
Well, obviously Kain and Raziel are openly gay and actively destroying society. You know, I might be remembering this wrong, but I think in Metal Gear Solid 2, they tell you that Vamp has his codename not because he sucks blood, but because he's actually bisexual. Except that's not correct. Being a vamp just means you use your feminine charms to seduce men.
Well, in his case, because he was a man, that would still make him gay, right?
Yeah, but not because he's a vampire. It was like a mistaken word use.
Well, the point is, I think that any similarity between the experience of being gay and being a vampire is completely coincidental unless the writer is specifically going out of their way to draw that parallel.
Yeah, but a lot of undertones can be there, and it's really easy to go to that parallel. So not every vampire story is about being gay, but it's sure as heck easy to do. Gosh, it looked like these things could be set on fire if I had a fire Reaver. You know what, though? Because my social strategies are far advanced and no one understands them, I do have some amusing stories about trying to come out to people, yes. That sounds good. I actually kind of love these stories. Okay, I will tell you the story of my first girlfriend, who as it turns out was not actually my girlfriend.
Oh, well that sounds like it started off wonderfully.
It did, yes. She was much the loner and had no other friends. We were both about 16, and by then I had figured out I appreciated the shape of the woman, yes. The problem was, her family was very religious, and I did not want my family to know anything. But she was very cuddly. When you are first discovering these things, it is easy to mix the signals, and I am positive she was in love with me, but I had to seek the proof, yes. So I hatched this plan. I invite my friend to spend the night, and back then they had not suspended my driver's license, yes. So I show up to her house, and I am wearing all the makeup. I had scrounged up every makeup I owned, and I put it on. Also, I am wearing the sexiest clothes I could find. A tube top and a mini skirt.
You had a tube top and a mini skirt? Has that ever been, like, classically attractive in any era?
Silence! It shows the boobs, it shows the legs. My mother did not approve. By all accounts, it was sexy. Yes. So, anyway, I ask my friend if she wants to go for a drive, and she shrugs. She's okay for these. So I begin driving, and I have the clever plan. I am going to drive us both far away from civilization, into the night, where we may not be found by our parents, and where we may commit evil deeds. Away we go, beyond the city, corn passing on either side for like half an hour, and my friend seems very nervous. At first I think it is because she has the same idea as me, but then I start to think, I am driving her into the wilderness of farmland. What if she thinks I am the serial murderer? And now I want to alleviate tension, so I turn to this girl, and I look at her dead in the face, and I say, wouldn't it be funny if I killed you and left you in the corn? And she just stares at me.
God
No, why would you say that? I was trying to alleviate tension. She was like much bigger than I was. She was like a head taller than me and much heavier. I've never been very big, but it gets worse, yes. No, it gets worse? It gets worse because I don't actually have a plan. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just trying to take her away from society and then, I don't know, I just assume it is going to work out. So I turn off a road, I don't know where this leads, but it turns out it leads into like a gravel pit, like a quarry, you know? Where presumably you might bury something. So I pull down there, but can't go in. There is a gate, but I pull up to the gate and I stop the car. So now I am sitting there with my friend, and she is quiet, yes, and I'm trying to figure out the next step of my master plan. And as I'm sitting there brainstorming, I realize I must pee. Oh no. Yes. So I turn to my friend and I say, wait here, and I leave the car. Now, it was like the middle of autumn, and I am in nothing but a tube top and a mini skirt. Luckily, I am wearing boots, but I run off into the woods and I am freezing to death while I look for a private place. But while I am there, I stumble into the tiny shovel, the spade, and I think to myself, oh, it is my lucky day. Winter is coming and maybe I will need to shovel the snow around my car. So the shovel is mine now, yes. Shovel acquired. Shovel acquired. But when I go back to the car, I have left the keys inside and my friend has locked the doors. I tell her to let me in and she asks why I have the shovel. I try to explain that winter is coming, so I need this shovel, and she doesn't believe me even though I spoke the truth. I wind up standing out there in the cold, arguing through the glass with her about this shovel for I don't even know how long. And finally, she decides to let me back in. Yes. So I sit down, still holding this shovel, and try to lay down as seductively as possible from the passenger seat of a car, which as it turns out is not easy to do, yes. And my friend asks me, what are we doing out here? And it starts to sink in for me that maybe she and I are not on the same page. Yes. And what if she betrays me to my parents? So I tried to come up with an explanation, and all I can think to say is, I needed to get my shovel. Yes. And with that, I start up my car, and I spend the entire trip home ridiculing her for not knowing the value of the shovel. Yes.
Good lord, Peyton. Smooth operator.
By sheer luck, this temple contained exactly the kind of clue that I was looking for. Here was a mural of the vampire Vorador, forging the Reaver. This was significant because Vorador was still alive in this era, and I could probably shake him down for information. Over here, this other mural depicted a vampire doing hover hands over Vorador. Vorador was apparently the first human to ever be transformed into a vampire.
So after all that trouble, did you ever actually hook up with this girl?
No. Yes. And that's why being gay is like being a vampire. If I had been a vampire, I would have just turned that girl out in the cornfield, yes. No, see, but vampires have that rule. You have to be invited in. This is a stupid metaphor, right? This is like saying that to be gay, you have to be like a vacuum. You have to be turned on before you start sucking, yes. No one's gonna read a story about being a vacuum, Peyton.
I don't know. What if it's a romantic story and the vacuum has a shady past?
Like what? You mean like it was part of a gang once and it's got a heart of gold but it's misunderstood?
Exactly. It's a bad vacuum, but it craves love, right?
It is still a vacuum, yes.
I've heard that some people will go for vacuums.
Well, I've heard that too. We might be just on the verge of discovering a new genre of romantic novel.
We're gonna be big, Ray. You know how copyright law lasts for like 100 years? We're gonna need all 100 years of it.
Absolutely all of it.
You know, now that I say that, I've got to wonder how much intellectual property actually makes use of the entire copyright law. Most stuff is just a flash in a pan. You forget it in, what, 5 years, tops?
Since when is the law written by or for average people who do average things, Taylor? Yes. You know that copyright is probably why a good couple of companies aren't dead by now, though. They successfully reboot some old IP and then just keep on chugging. But anyway, that aside, man, we haven't talked a lot about this game today.
Well, what would you like to observe? This temple is much the same as the last temple we were in.
Yep. Oh, that reminds me, I finally got a chance to play Nosgoth. It's an online third-person shooter, kinda, that's based in this setting. The game was okay, but the developers are really clearly trying to kill off their player base.
How do you figure?
Well, it's really hard to set up an account, it's not very compatible with Steam, and it also seems that you can't play with all the classes at the outset because you have to pay money to do that. You can earn points towards unlocking new classes, but then you have to play competitively and not in private games with friends.
Well, that just sounds dead in the cradle.
Yeah, it is, which is a shame, because it's not bad. I also don't think it's the most fun I've ever had playing a game, but I mean, it's playable. If you round up some friends, it's pretty good even. But if you play with friends, you don't get any rewards, and then you can't play with new classes or do new stuff, so, you know, it's a wash. I found myself face to face with the original vampiric Nature Guardian, but years of imprisonment had driven her to gibbering insanity. Oh boy, it's the first boss. Peyton, quick, get on an FAQ site and tell me what the strategy is. Okay, I'm looking it up. Give me a second. Yes. Okay, it says, hit aggressively with the Reaver. Yes.
Are you really on a strategy guide?
No, yes. It is true though. I pretty much hit aggressively with Reaver will work.
What's the main challenge at work here? It looks like the Guardian just stands there and takes it.
Occasionally he does this knockback thing that does damage, and also he does damage. That's pretty much it. It's a battle of attrition.
Oh, well, can he do enough damage to kill you before you kill him?
Not if I keep hitting him. If he's a lady, guys, yes. Oh, right, yeah. They lose a lot of their curves after they've been dead and rotting for a while.
Do you think that dress she's wearing is a ceremonial funeral thing, or is that what all the vampires wore?
Janos wears a toga.
So basically, this lady comes up out of her grave and she's wearing the equivalent to a tuxedo.
Yep, if it were the right time and era, she would be snazzily dressed. I bet that headdress wasn't normal either.
That poor Nature Guardian, Ray. They'd been waiting around for thousands of years with nothing to do, and then you showed up and you killed them. You fed them into a giant hourglass.
You monster! Yes. Hey, I'm not the one who built the hourglass that absorbs the spirit of the Nature Guardian. I assume he must have filled out a form before they put him in the sarcophagus.
This raises some interesting questions, though. Raziel's supposed to be off the rails of fate, so the ancient race couldn't have predicted him coming down here. Yet the first Guardians of the Pillars are being used to power this hourglass, which then powers the Reaver. How can this possibly be a thing?
Oh, we probably ought to call plot hole, but I don't want to call plot hole. It seemed the soul of a single Pillar Guardian was only enough for half a tank with this hourglass. More interestingly, the power source for my Reaver were the souls of vampires. What exactly could this mean of my weapon or its intent? Okay, so in the actual game, Raziel doesn't mention that little bit about his Reaver being powered by vampire souls, but I think it's significant. Or I want to believe it's significant, because Raziel doesn't actually think it's significant.
I'm really bored, you know.
Oh, have you considered getting a hobby, like counting tiles?
I think I much prefer burning up the other dead with magical powers. Well, we are meeting the original Pillar Guardians and learning nothing.
They're crazy anyway. And they serve the Elder Squid. Anyway though, I've got a theory about the Reaver. I think that it was originally designed having something to do with souls, intentionally, because the ancient vampires are all about death and rebirth and that stuff. They believe in a cycle of purification and rebirth, and the Reaver is supposed to absorb people's life. Well then how come Janos didn't know the Reaver would absorb Raziel? Yes. Janos was the Reaver Guardian, he should be informed on these things. Well, maybe Janos assumed that Raziel wouldn't want to be trapped forever in the Reaver.
Oh man, what a presumptuous thing to assume.
Well, I bet the Time Guardian looked forward and he said, okay, this guy Raziel has to get in the Reaver.
Well then, we'll have to choose a Reaver Guardian who's personable and very charming, who can convince this person to get into the sword.
No, I'm seeing ahead, and this guy is a total dick. We need to not tell him anything and make him think that he's gonna kick everyone else's ass.
Ah, okay, I know just the guy. Get Janos on the phone. That guy is a total dork, and he thinks that everyone means well at heart.
Poor Janos. I can just imagine Raziel showing up and being like, what the heck, Janos? What's going on? And Janos would be like, oh man, no, they would never do that. They're such nice guys. Your friends are dicks, Janos. Yes. They worship the Elder Squid. The Elder Squid is a dick. Your friends worship dicks.
Okay, but that still doesn't explain what the deal is with these forges. Presumably Raziel never would have made it here, so there's no reason for them to have built the things.
Maybe they foresaw their death and they were trying to hedge their bets in the hope that time would change? After all, clearly you can't change time. The Guardian of Time would know that.
It seems like they're going through an awful lot of trouble just to spite the Hilden.
Well, of course they can't predict exactly how time is gonna change. They just know it's gonna. Behold! You have defeated the Guardian. This just goes to show that the strongest specter of all is the specter of incompetence. Yes. Oh, come on, Raziel earned that one. But anyway, here looks like a good place to stop for now. Thanks for playing with us, everybody. Hey, thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed our stuff. Also, if you want to support us on Patreon, it would mean a lot. But the biggest way you can help us out is to share this video. Even if you didn't like it, maybe other people will see it and they might agree with you. That would be cool, kinda, for you. Whatever the case, I hope you'll catch us on the next one and that you have a good day.